Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Connecting inFlow to QuickBooks Online webinar today. Nice. All right, so we'll start with some introductions for anyone who may not recognize me from any past webinars. My name is Adriana. I am the manager of our customer success and our customer support department here at inFlow. Yeah, and I'll pass it over to Anurag to introduce himself as well.
Thanks, Adriana. Hey, everyone. My name's Anurag. I'm part of the sales team here at inFlow as a sales development rep. Really nice to be here and welcome. And yeah, looking forward to getting the webinar going.
All right, so let's get this started. I'm going to go ahead and share presentation with you guys. All right, so for today's topics, we are going over the QuickBooks Online integration. We're going to go over an overview of it. We'll be discussing the sales order push feature, purchase order push feature, as well as the inventory value push feature. We'll also be going over the setup. So we'll be talking about the setup checklist, things that you need to make sure you have done before setting up the actual QBO integration, connecting and mapping your QBO accounts. And then we'll also be going over a demo and showcasing some of the integration features, namely just how you connect and map your accounts, a sales order push, as well as a purchase order push today. So to start off, again, we're going over the QuickBooks Online integration. And QuickBooks Online, will be referring to it as QBO throughout this presentation. It's one of our most used integrations. It's one of two of our accounting integrations that allows you to do the following. So mentioned a little bit earlier, we push sales orders from inFlow to QBO. We push purchase orders from inFlow to QBO, and we also push inventory value as well as the cost of goods sold from inFlow to QBO. So the reason from inFlow to QBO is highlighted, bolded right there for you guys is because this is a one-way integration. So we integrate from inFlow to QBO. We do not pull any information from QBO back to inFlow. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And we currently support QuickBooks US, Canada, UK, and Australia. There are various other QuickBooks for different countries that we don't officially support. You guys can try them, but we don't recommend that as there's various different things that we don't officially support with different countries. Yeah. So we'll start off with the sales order push today. So inFlow will push a sales order or an SO to QBO whenever it's marked as either invoiced, paid, or partially paid. So you guys can see in that graphic at the bottom right here, we have this is the inFlow web app. And as you can see, you can mark something as invoiced or mark it as paid, or even enter in the paid box here if you have a partial payment to enter in. All of those things will trigger over a push to QuickBooks. So more on the sales order push. So whenever a sales order is pushed from inFlow, it will be created as either an invoice, a credit memo, and or it will have payment transactions created in QBO as well. So this is determined by whether the order has a positive amount due or a negative amount due. If it's a positive amount due, it will be created as an invoice because that's money that you're looking to collect from your customer. If it's a negative amount due, that will be created as a credit memo, as that is money that is due to your customer. Another couple notes. So any refund that's listed on a sales order will be listed as a journal entry in QuickBooks. inFlow sales order number will show up as the invoice number in QBO. And any payments, refunds, and adjustments will create different line items in your QBO sales transaction list. So a couple things to keep note of. We won't go through every single one of these fields, but this is just a list of fields from sales orders that get pushed to QBO. As I mentioned, the sales order number will show up as the invoice number in QBO. There are a lot of fields that do push to QBO. That whole list is here for you. We also have it listed on our knowledge base online. James has just linked that for Laura actually in the chat. But there are a number of fields that do not push to QBO. So notably the PO number on a sales order specifically will not push to QBO. The sales rep field currently does not push to QBO. The location of the items, non-customer costs, any payments that were made by credit aren't going to be pushing to QBO. Custom fields, as well as the requested ship date. All right. So now we're just going to go into the sales order push account mapping. So I'll also be demoing this at the end of the webinar, closer to the end of the webinar as well. But the two main account mappings that you need to note whenever you're setting up your integration with QBO are the product income account. So if and when items are created in QBO via inFlow, so if we're ever pushing over a sales order and there are products on the sales order that don't exist in QBO, we actually create them in QBO for you. In those cases, we do have to set the product income account. So this can be any income type account, and the sales of these products will be reflected in the account that you choose. It is good to note if you do have any existing products that live in QBO that have a product income account that's already mapped, we will respect the existing mapping for QBO. So we're not going to override it with whatever you set for this account mapping here. We'll respect whatever's set up in QBO for that individual product, even if it's mapped to a different account in the integration settings. Secondarily, so we have the payments account. So you do need to map the payments account if you have our payment push enabled. So I'll go into that in just a moment, but this can be any bank or asset type account for receiving payments from your customers whenever a sale is made. If your customer pays you via QBO Pay, however, you can very easily disable this option in order to avoid any double entry. So essentially what that means, if you do already take payments from your customers in QBO, we will not push any payments that you take from inFlow, or else it will result in duplicate transactions. It'll show that your customer paid twice, and obviously we don't want that. So that option will be disabled, or can be enabled or disabled. And again, I'll show you that during the demo portion as well. But I'll stop really quickly because we're near the end of our sales order push section for now. Does anyone have any questions, or is there anything, Anurag or James, that might have come up in the chat that you guys think is notable?
Well, thanks, James. James has answered a lot of the questions here. Yao is just asking if it's possible to record the session. I mean, I'll let you take that, Adriana, but I know that we are going to be putting it up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know it normally takes us about a week to post this on YouTube, so you can absolutely view it. I'd say give us about a week's time before we post it, but we'll definitely have this recorded for you. Yeah, and James has the handy YouTube link for you there in the chat as well. Thank you, James.
Awesome. Okay, I think there's just another quick question from Marcy. Is there a particular trigger to mark in inFlow to automatically send an invoice to a customer via QuickBooks? Does creating the sales order do that?
So yeah, I'll take this. So no, that would have to be set up in QBO directly. The only thing that gets pushed from inFlow is the actual sales order itself. We don't have any settings in inFlow to actually send the sales order directly over to the customer automatically at this time. But that is a pretty cool feature request. We can definitely log that with our development team to see if that's something we can add for the future. And so the entire chat is going to be logged, guys. So any feature requests, questions, or anything like that, we'll have a record of this. So we'll definitely pass this on to our team. But yeah. Awesome. All right.
Cool.
Did we get to all the questions? We can move on, and we have a Q&A portion at the end as well. So
Yep, we're good so far.
Yeah, perfect. So now I'm just going to be passing over to Anurag to go over our purchase order push.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adriana. Thank you so much, Adriana. So, all right. So yeah, we're going to be talking about our purchase order push. So inFlow will push a purchase order or a PO over to QBO when the inventory, so when it's created in inFlow and it's marked either as fulfilled or partially fulfilled, right? So if you receive some or all of the items that you ordered, and you can see in the graphic there, you'll see the on the bottom, well, on the bottom right, the fulfill button that Adriana, thank you so much for pointing that out. And when that PO gets pushed, inFlow creates what's called a QBO bill in your QuickBooks Online account. Okay. If we go to the next slide, Adriana, please. Thank you so much. So when a payment is entered into a purchase order that's either partially or fully fulfilled, a bill payment or a QBO bill payment is created. When that payment, so if there's a PO in inFlow that's unfulfilled and you enter a payment against it, an expense gets created in QBO. So again, just to reiterate, if you have a PO in inFlow and it's not fulfilled and you enter a payment against it, it's counted, it creates an expense in QBO. If it's either partially, so if you received any stock at all, partial or fully fulfilled, then a bill payment gets created. And then when that PO becomes, and then again, of course, if you have a PO that's unfulfilled initially, you record a payment, it creates a QBO expense, and then you receive against that PO. So now it becomes partially or fully fulfilled. That QBO expense gets converted into a bill payment, and it gets linked to the QBO bill as well. Okay. All right. I think we can, yeah. So let's talk about the fields. So again, what fields, similar to SOs, what fields from POs get pushed over to QBO? Again, not going to read the whole slide to you there. There's a few fields there. The inFlow's PO number will show up as the bill number in QBO. And then we've got various fields that sync over as well. So it's just the bill number or the inFlow order number, the due date, products, and taxes. And I just realized I ended up reading you the list anyway. It's a short list. So there we go. All right, let's move on. In terms of account mappings, so we've got the COGS or the cost of goods sold account. This should be a cost of goods sold type account to track the cost of goods sold. So in other words, when an item is sold, it increases this account by the cost of the item. So if you sell something worth $10, your cost of goods account will increase by $10. Inventory asset account can be any type of asset account to track the value of your inventory only for your stocked products. Obviously, it doesn't apply for non-stocked. For example, if you have an inventory worth $1 million, this is the account that will store that value. It's also the product expense account that we set up for stocked items. Okay. Perfect. Hope that's clear. So another account mapping is the adjustments or other costs account. So this can be a cost of goods sold type account, but it should not be the same as the COGS account that you'd previously mapped in the on the previous slide that we saw. Otherwise, you'll see some double entry issues. So just be mindful of that. So in other words, this account is really used to balance out the inventory asset account. It's also used to track the cost value of inflows non-stocked items. Okay. Again, it's also the account we use to set the product expense account for your non-stocked or services items. The taxes on purchases account, this only applies to our US-based customers. This can be any expense or liability type account. So the mapping only needs to be done on US editions of QBO, since QBO US does not support tracking taxes on purchases on their own POs or bills. Okay, perfect. Let's continue. inFlow's payment method, it's an important field rather, in pushing the PO over to QBO. So if you have payment sync enabled. If you use QBO Pay, for example, then it's best to disable the field if you're using QBO Pay to pay your vendors. Payments, so a couple of other account mappings, payments or check. This is the payment account for paying bills to the vendor. So if the inFlow PO has a payment method of check or check for our Canadian customers, then that payment will be deducted from this specific QBO payment account. Similarly for credit cards, so payments for credit card payments, that's the payment account for paying bills if you're using specific to credit card accounts only, right? So if the inFlow PO has either no payment method or a credit card payment method, then that payment will be deducted from this QBO payment account as well. Okay, I believe that's it for purchase orders, but let's pause there. I'll just double check the chats. I think we're up to date. James has been doing an amazing job at answering all the questions here. So I think we're set to move on.
Perfect. All right, so we'll go over some inventory value push. Once we're done that, we'll get into the fun stuff, more of the setup and demo portion towards the end. So inventory value. So inFlow calculates the inventory value essentially by adding up all of the costs of your products you currently have in stock on the inFlow side. Any adjustments to the inventory value will be pushed to QBO as journal entries. So whenever your inventory value increases or decreases, inFlow will push the adjustment to that as a journal entry to QBO. So your inventory is typically affected by purchase of items. You know, when you're purchasing items, that will increase the value of your inventory that you have. Whenever you sell your items, so sale of items, it will decrease your inventory value. It'll also increase your cost of goods sold as you're selling the items there. Any stock adjustments you make, any count sheets that you enter into the system, as that will adjust stock as well. Whenever you're doing any work orders, so for any of our manufacturing customers, if you guys are using our bill of materials add-on or work orders add-on from our inFlow desktop app, you guys will be a little bit more familiar with the work order section. But yeah, work orders will also affect your inventory value there. And lastly, also cost adjustments. Whenever your costs change for any of your products, purchasing or selling, so yeah, the inventory push can happen one of three ways. I did notice James had mentioned to fill in the chat there one of the ways that it pushes, but I'll go through these here. So whenever a PO is pushed and a QBO bill is created, that will automatically push your total inventory value over to QuickBooks. So this means that there's a possibility that some of the journal entries are a combination of various POs and inventory cost value lumped together. So you may see some journal entries that may not make a lot of sense, but essentially, whenever inFlow pushes that inventory value, it is taking into account all of the things that I had previously mentioned in the past slide. So any cost adjustments that had happened, any stock adjustments, any work orders, and it will basically lump it all into a journal entry there on the QBO side. The second way that an inventory push can happen is if you manually click the push inventory value in your integration settings. I'll go ahead and show you guys that in the QBO setup once we get there. There's a push inventory value button if you guys ever want to just push it manually yourselves. As well, our third way, our backend system also pushes the inventory value daily for you. So typically it's early in the morning in your own local time. James had noted 2 a.m. That is correct. So we typically push that around 2 a.m. automatically in the system for you guys. So you don't have to manually push it or manually create a PO every day. Right. So now I just want to go over the cost of goods sold push that happens. This is basically paired with our inventory value push as well. So whenever a sales order is marked as fulfilled, specifically. Now, going over the sales order push, previously we chatted about the sales order being invoiced or paid. So that matters for the actual sales orders being pushed into QBO. But since we're talking about cost of goods sold specifically now, this sales order inventory status, the fulfillment status is what matters when it comes to those cost of goods sold. So inFlow will update QBO's cost of goods sold account that you mapped in the settings with the cost of goods sold value for that order. The cost of goods sold will still be pushed if you do not have your sales order sync enabled. But you do have your purchase order and inventory value sync enabled there. Again, because it doesn't matter if you have your sales order paid, it just depends on the fulfillment status, and that ties into your inventory value. If you guys would like to know how inFlow calculates cost of goods sold, we have a great article called How Does inFlow Cloud Calculate the Cost of a Product / Cost of Goods Sold in our knowledge base. James, if you don't mind linking that in the chat just for anyone that might want to take a look there, then that would be great as well. But yeah, we have a very, very detailed article on how we calculate that for you guys. All right, so before we move on, let me just double check to see if we have any specific inventory value questions in the chat that may not have been addressed yet by James. But let's see. I do see one from Joseph. I see James had responded, but I'll go ahead and read it out here. Can inventory value push be split into different classes in QBO? This is something we've been unable to do to track our profit for each group of products. So James had mentioned our our integration specifically does not split the cost of goods sold by group or category. Yeah, this is definitely something we can submit as a feature request, but you guys can also take a look to see on the QBO side if it's something that you guys can split up between different accounts after the initial inventory value has been pushed. Not 100% sure if that is possible, but yeah, perfect. Hopefully we can get that feature submitted there for you. All right. Looks like, thank you
Mm.
for linking the cost of goods sold article there, James. Yeah, looks like we can move on to the setup checklist here.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so these are just some things before you connect your QBO integration to inFlow. These are some things that we recommend checking before doing anything with that integration. So first and foremost, we want you guys to check if your quantities and costs for your products are accurate in inFlow. This is definitely very, very important. You want to make sure everything, your stock levels, your costs are accurate in inFlow, as the inventory value is tied to that. So if you are using the inventory value push setting, it is an optional setting. You do not have to have this enabled if you're only interested in pushing over sales orders, for instance. If you are using the inventory value push setting, you do need to make sure that your product quantities and costs are accurate, essentially. Um, do your home currencies in inFlow and QBO match as well? This is very important. If they don't match, you won't be able to sync anything, essentially. So you'll need to make sure that the main currency in inFlow, your home currency, is the same as it is in QBO. So if you do use more than one currency for your customers, not to worry, that's no problem. You can turn on the multi-currency setting in QBO to avoid any issues as well. All right. We also have a couple extra things in regards to taxes and product types. So as part of the integration setup, which we'll go over in a few moments, you do need to map all of the taxes that you have in inFlow to matching taxes in QBO. So one question we have, are the taxes in inFlow and QBO the same? If you're missing a tax rate in QBO, you do need to create it in order to successfully sync your mappings, your tax mappings. And lastly, is your QBO account using non-inventory product types? This is very, very important for inventory value. Again, if you're going to be using the inventory value feature for QBO, you definitely need to ensure that the products that you're tracking in inFlow are listed as non-inventory product types in QBO. So if you are using an inventory product type in QBO for the same product that you're tracking in inFlow, you do need to change your products in QBO to non-inventory. Reason being, if you're tracking the product quantities and stock levels in both systems, they're both going to equate to inventory value, which will cause double entries and essentially duplicate inventory value whenever that's pushed from inFlow to QBO. So it will update the stock levels and it will cause a lot of inaccurate adjustments on that front. So please ensure that you have your products marked as non-inventory in QBO before you set up the integration there as well. All right, now, sorry, go ahead, Anurag.
Adriana, just a quick question from Marcy. She's asking, when I create a new product in inFlow, will it automatically create that item in QBO?
It's a great question. So no, it will not automatically create the item in QBO whenever you create it. The only time items are created in QBO is if they are on a sales order and they don't already exist in QBO. So let's just say you create a product, it's a blue t-shirt, for example, Marcy, and you created an inFlow, you add it to a sales order and you invoice that sales order. Let's say you don't have that blue t-shirt created in QBO, that product will get created once the sales order is pushed. Again, if it's marked as invoiced, if it's marked as paid, or it's marked as partially paid. So that's the only way a product will ever get created in QBO is if it's associated to a sales order or purchase order. In that instance. So not automatic in the sense of whenever you create it as a product, but automatic in the sense of whenever you push it on a sales order. Yeah, no problem at all, Marcy.
Awesome.
Will, I do notice Will has a question.
Yeah,
Taxes do not match
not
in
match.
UK. When will this be corrected? So I do know we have, there is a slight issue. I believe I've seen your ticket and you're discussing that with my colleague Marcos and my colleague Eliano as well. Some of the taxes that are automatically set up in the QBO UK accounts are not 100% compatible with inFlow at the moment. So it's a bug that our team is looking into, and will be following up with you once that bug is looked into with our development team. But it's specifically happening with any pre-existing default taxes that are in QBO UK. Any taxes that you have in QBO that are custom will sync essentially seamlessly with QBO as far as I'm aware, but we'll definitely be following up with you in that ticket, Will, once we've got an answer for you. And yeah, just to answer Phil's most recent question here, won't a purchase order push also create a product in QBO? Yes, it will also create the product in QBO. It's both a sales order and purchase order there, Phil. Thank you for clarifying. But yeah, all right. So we are ready to get into the demo portion, the exciting portion. If we have any visual learners here, which I imagine most of you guys are, if you're joining a webinar, I'm sure you guys have been waiting for this moment. So let me go ahead and share my QBO section here for you, and we'll get started. All right, so I'll start from the home page here. If anyone is unfamiliar with how to set up any integrations with inFlow, we do have an integrations tab. If you click on your profile button here, head over to integrations, you'll be able to see all of the core integrations we have, as well as any third-party integrations we have towards the bottom. And our API is also here as well if anyone has or is interested in looking into our API connections. But anyways, so we'll go ahead and click on our QBO integration here. And once you guys are here, it'll essentially ask you to connect to your QuickBooks account. If you guys are already logged into your QuickBooks account, then it will automatically connect. But if you do need to sign in, like I do myself, then it will just request for you guys to sign in here. All right, then I'm just going to go ahead and click the connect button to verify that I do want to connect our inFlow inventory account to our QuickBooks account. And success. Now we have the QuickBooks model up where this is where we'll be setting up all of the account mappings and our payment setting mappings, as well as our tax mappings that I was discussing a little bit earlier. So first and foremost, so to go over the sales order push, as I mentioned earlier, you do not need to have this enabled. If you guys are not interested in pushing your sales orders over to inFlow, you can simply click the enable push button. It will disable it, and you can move on to the next portion of the setup, which is the purchase order and inventory value push. But for the purposes of this, we of course need our sales order push to be enabled. So I'll go over that lightly with you guys. So first and foremost, if anyone remembers, we do need to set up the product income account. So this can be any income account. I'm just going to type in one that I know we have in here, set it up as the sales income account here. And this will directly pull from all of the accounts that you have in your QBO account. So we pull all of those and just have them in this drop down here for you. You can also have your customer name if you prefer to have it included or excluded from your invoice address. You can have that option either enabled or disabled here. If you guys are ever wondering about what any of these options mean when you guys are setting it up, you can just hover over the little tooltip here, and we have a little brief section on what each of these means. The payment settings push. So like we mentioned earlier, if your customers already pay you via QBO, QuickBooks, you can disable the payment push to avoid any double payments when marking orders as paid in inFlow. So in order to do that, you would just disable this little option payment push here, and you can move on to the next step. Again, for the purposes of this demo, we'll be enabling this, and we're going to be setting up the payments account as this payment account here, one of our bank accounts. Lastly, for the sales order push setup, we are going to be mapping the taxes. So these are the taxes that I have set up in inFlow, and any of the taxes that appear in the dropdown are taxes that are set up in the QBO side. So I'm just going to be setting them up here. In Ontario, we've got our HST 13% tax, setting up our non-taxable and our GST. All right. So moving on to our purchase order and inventory value push. Again, like I mentioned, if you guys are not interested in pushing over any of your purchase orders or interested in pushing your inventory value to QBO, you can simply disable this and you can complete the setup. Again, for the purposes of this demo, we want to have this enabled as well, so we can go through this with you. One question I've gotten in the past is, can you push purchase orders without pushing inventory value to QBO? Unfortunately, no, they are tied together. In order to push any purchase orders, you do need to push your inventory value and vice versa. And so that's just at the moment the way that the integration works. So we'll go over the account mappings here. So as Anurag mentioned earlier, you've got your cost of goods sold account. This can be any cost of goods sold account in QBO. So we'll set it up as a good old cost of goods sold. Got our inventory asset account. This could be any asset type account. I'll set it up here. Then we've got our adjustments and other costs account. Now, this one is especially important. We do not want to have it mapped as the same cost of goods sold account that you have mapped here. Reason being, this is where all of your adjustments are going to land. So essentially, if you have the same cost of goods sold account set as your adjustments account, it will result in duplicate adjustments and entries, and it will inflate your cost of goods sold. So you definitely want to make sure that these two accounts are different. And in this case, I will be setting it up as our inFlow adjustments cost of goods sold. This is something we've set up previously in our test account here. Our payment settings is very similar. As Anurag mentioned, we have a separate payments check account and we have a separate payments credit card account here for our payment push. Just like sales orders, you can disable the payment push if you'd like, but we'll go ahead and enable it here for you guys. So I'll set this one up as a bank account or a check account, and then this one will be set up as a credit card type account, as it will be accounting for the credit card payments. And lastly, we're going to be setting up the same exact taxes. So I'll be setting these up here. And we're going to go ahead and complete the integration. And if all goes well, hopefully we'll get a nice green check mark. Yep, there we go. We got the green check mark here. If you ever want to review any of the mappings that you set up, you can click on the See Overview section here, but you'll also be able to look back at it at any time. So as you can see, the sales order push and the purchase order push are both enabled. You can see the last time things were pushed were at 10:15 a.m. this morning, but we can go ahead and push things again if we need to. And if you would like to disconnect your QBO integration for whatever reason, you can go ahead and disconnect that here. I'm going to go ahead and save. Once that loads, you'll see any and all of the integrations that you already have connected with inFlow will appear under this new connected status section. All the rest of the integrations will appear at the bottom. And if you ever want to check your status and setup, you can just go ahead and click on the integration of your choice. And it will bring up that same little pop-up.
Hey,
All
Joanna,
right. Yeah.
just a quick question from Marcy. Really great question. She's asking if you have to disconnect and reconnect the integration to change any of the account mapping settings.
Great question. You don't have to disconnect it. You can actually go ahead and click on these little arrows. And thank you for mentioning that, Marcy. So you can click on these little arrows here next to the enabled section, and you can go ahead and change any of the accounts that you have mapped and hit save. And then any sales orders that get pushed, for example, here, from then on, we'll have the product income account, sales of product income versus the previous one I had set up, which was sales income. But yeah, so you don't have to disconnect it. You can just go ahead and go into the settings and change anything that you need. And go ahead and hit save. Hope that clarifies things for you, Marcy. But yeah, we will go ahead and move on to pushing a sales order. Oh, we just got one question from Vasaroth. Looks like he joined a little late, no problem. Does it push both ways in and out? So unfortunately not, Vasaroth. This is a one-way integration. So we only push from inFlow to QBO. Nothing from QBO gets pushed back into inFlow with this integration. But great question. All right, so we'll start off with creating ourselves a sales order. We'll use our budget mind and collectibles customer here, and I'll add on a couple products. right, so I went ahead and added our Firebat product, our Firebird product, our sunglasses collection from our Archon optical shop. Some of you guys may be familiar with this from our knowledge base, but I'll go ahead and save this order. Now, in its current state, nothing will push to QBO. Reason being, if anyone remembers, and in order for a sales order to push to QBO, it is dependent on the payment status or invoice status here. So as you guys can see, this is uninvoiced and it has not been paid at all. So in order for us to get this pushed right over to QBO, we could do one of three things. As I mentioned a little earlier, we can mark this as invoiced, we can mark it as paid, or we can enter in a payment that's less than the current balance and mark it as partially paid. So I'll go ahead and show you marking it as invoiced. Do that first. I'll pop right over to our QuickBooks account really quickly there. Okay. Sorry, QuickBooks kicked me out again, but let's take a look at that. All right, in order to see your sales orders in QuickBooks, you guys may be familiar, you can go over to the All Sales tab. But as you can see, we do have our sales order, and this was sales order 37. This sales order pushed right over to QBO as an invoice, as it does have a balance due. If we click on that here, you'll be able to see once this loads. Yep. So you'll be able to see the products that got created. So we've got our Firebat product, we've got our Firebird product, we've got all of our customers' information, including the billing address, shipping address, invoice date, we've got the due date, invoice number as well. We've got the amount, the quantities, we've got the total amount due. So all of that is here on our invoice. The only thing that hasn't pushed is the payment amount because we didn't mark this invoice as paid. We didn't put any payments on there. So I'll go ahead and show you guys what that'll look like once we do receive a payment. So I'll go back to our inFlow side. I'm going to go ahead and mark this just as fully paid. So now the full balance is $0. The paid amount is $81.30. Share this tab here. And so once I refresh on the QBO side, we should see a payment come out.
There we go.
Right. Yeah. My all sales tab does not like me today. So I'm going to go over to the invoice section. We'll go over to the sales order 37. You can see the amount has been deposited and you can see the payment was made. This is paid $81.30. All done. All right. Any questions on the sales order setup or any questions I might have missed in the chat here? I do see another question from Marcy. So is there a way to set up an email to go out to a customer with the invoice from QuickBooks when the sales order gets added to QuickBooks? I'm not entirely sure if there's a way to set that up on the QuickBooks side. I do know there's not a way to set that up on the inFlow side of things, but not sure offhand if there's a way to set that up on the QuickBooks side, unfortunately, Marcy. Sorry about that. You might need to do a little bit of digging in the QuickBooks knowledge base on their side or in the QuickBooks settings, but there might be.
There is a, sorry, just to jump in, Adriana, there is a setting in QBO where you can do recurring invoices. But again, just keep in mind that if you do that, all of the future invoices, they're not going to get brought back into inFlow. But yeah, there's the only option that I'm aware of so far is the recurring invoices in QBO itself.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you, Anurag. All right, I do see we have a question from Scott.
Question from Scott. Yep.
Can a specific product on sales orders be mapped to a custom income account within the chart of accounts in QBO? So for example, I sometimes handle procurement for global companies and have a custom account in QBO for sales tax reimbursement, which is not an actual tax liability account. I want to say yes. So essentially, you can set up a specific income account per product. I'm not sure about the chart of accounts section specifically in QBO, but I do know that you can have different product income accounts mapped for different products, and inFlow will respect whatever product income account you have mapped for your products. So I can answer a section of that question, but I'm not too sure if James can do a little bit of, oh, okay. Hopefully that answered everything for you, Scott. Looks like it's good to go. But yeah, we will definitely respect any product income accounts you have mapped for per product. Perfect. Okay. Glad to hear. We've got another one from Rebecca. So if one customer has multiple sales orders, can it create one invoice in QBO? Good question. So if there are multiple sales orders in inFlow, that will create multiple invoices in QBO. So this is a per invoice, per sales order type of integration. The only way to push one invoice to QBO is to have everything on one invoice in inFlow. So hopefully that answers your question there, Rebecca. All right.
Yep.
So we'll go ahead and move on to the purchase order push demo here. Okay. So let's create a good old purchase order. We use our Soda Emporium. Don't know why we purchase our glasses from a Soda Emporium, but you never know. And let's get some of the Firebat and Firebird glasses back since we just sold them. Let's repurchase them. Got a great cost on the Firebird here, $0, but I'll go ahead and update that just for this demo here. So if anyone remembers, with purchase orders, specifically the fulfillment status is what matters for pushing over a bill to QBO. So it doesn't matter about the payment status. The payment status actually only incorporates the bill payments on the QBO side. So I'll go ahead and show you guys both. So let's go ahead and fulfill this PO. I'll navigate over to the expenses section in QBO in just a moment. But we'll go ahead and fulfill this. On the QBO side, we're going to go ahead and go to the bills section. And because we haven't yet paid this bill, I will take a look at the unpaid section. So yeah, this is our bill here. Let's view this bill. Okay, so we do have the PO number. Let's just make sure it matches here. So yeah, we've got PO 34 on the inFlow side, and we have got PO 34 on the QBO side. So as you guys can see, we've got the supplier information, the supplier mailing address. I don't think I actually had a mailing address on this side here. We've got the due date, again, bill number, and we've got the products here. So Firebat, Firebird, we've got the amounts, and we've got the total amount due. So all of that is on this side. And I'll go ahead and show you guys what it looks like when we mark this as paid as well. So this has officially been marked as paid. We've paid the full $21.80. And let's take a look to see if this bill has made it over to the paid section. I believe it has. Let's view it. Yep, there we go. Okay. So now you guys can see, now you guys can see bill 34 has been marked as paid. Payment was made on the 11th here. Total $21.80. But yeah, this has been paid on the QBO side. It's now a paid bill on the paid side here, and we're good to go. If a price changes in inflow, does it update the base price in QBO? So no, the only time the price would be updated in inflow would be if a sales order with the updated price gets pushed over to QBO. Then it'll update the price there, but it won't naturally update or automatically update the price if you just change it in inflow. It does need to be associated to a sales order in that case.
I think the overall sort of sense of this is really inflow is designed to be that one source of truth. So if you use inflow for sending out your sales orders, your purchase orders, will naturally update your QBO account as things progress. Is sort of one of the central themes here.
Thank you everyone for joining our webinar today. You guys made it a fantastic time. Hopefully you guys learned something today. And yeah, have a great day.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day or evening or night, depending on where you are.
Awesome.